This video is about compare and contrast. Now there's a couple of basic rules for comparing and contrasting. One thing is usually we focus on facts and not opinions, like two products, two schools, two countries, something like that. But again, we focus on the facts of those things and places. The next one is we usually try to give about an equal amount of time to both. So if you are talking about two different products like Apple and Samsung, you want to spend about an equal amount of time talking about both phones. Like I say many times in this class, what is your purpose? Are you informing us or persuading us? And if you are persuading us, then are you for or against something? So for example, if we look at a compare and contrast approach to talk about the unification of North and South Korea, we can decide, what do we want? Do we want to try to persuade people that North and South Korea should unify into one country? Or are we persuading people that North and South Korea should remain separate? You have to decide what is your purpose before you start. Our purpose leads us directly into two different strategies. One, we can focus on similarities. The second, we can focus on differences. So for example, if we continue with North and South Korea, if I want to say that North and South Korea should reunite, then I'll probably focus on the similarities. I would talk about how things are similar, like similar language, food, history, things like that. However, if I want to say that North and South Korea should not reunite, then maybe I'll focus on the differences in like economy, politics, and such. So you have to again decide what is your strategy before you start. After we decide our purpose and our strategy, the next thing we want to do is decide our method. How do we want to present the information? So for example, if I was to make like a basic 4-paragraph composition, I might have the introduction, 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Now in the body paragraphs, I would first focus on all the similarities that I want to talk about, and then the second paragraph maybe focus on all the differences. If we change the topic a little bit and talk about something like tennis and badminton, maybe in the first paragraph I talk about the similarities, like with the rackets, with the players, the pace of the game, things like that. Maybe the second thing I'll talk about the differences. I can talk about the difference of a racket, or maybe I'll talk about the difference between the ball and shuttlecock. Maybe I'll talk about how one played indoors mostly and the others played mostly outdoors. Maybe I'll talk about the court size, the dimension, the height of the net, these types of things as differences. The second method is point-by-point method. So if we had a traditional 5-paragraph composition, we'd have 1 paragraph that's introduction, 3 body paragraphs. Each of the body paragraphs would talk about similarities and differences of 1 point. And then you have your concluding paragraph. If we keep with the example of tennis and badminton through the point-by-point method, maybe the first paragraph in our body would talk about the racket, some of the similarities and some of the differences between a tennis and a badminton racket. The second thing, or the second body paragraph, might be scoring, and then we can talk about some of the similarities and differences of how scoring is done. The third one is popularity. I'll talk about some of the similarities and differences. Like for example, they're both very popular sports. However, tennis is much more popular in Europe and North America, and badminton is very popular in Asia. To quickly summarize what we talked about in this video, the first thing is you have to decide what is your purpose. Are you persuading or informing? Are you focusing on similarities or focusing on differences? The last thing, you have to decide what method do you want to present your actual information. Do you want to use a block method where you're presenting all the similarities and then all the differences? Or point-by-point method where you're talking about 1 point, similarities and differences, next point, similarities and differences, and your last point, similarities and differences.